I do want to mention a couple of upcoming events we got this Friday. We have an exclusive LGW tour of the new University of Maryland Capital Region Medical Center in Prince George's County. So check out the website if you'd like to join that. And then we've got a Leadership Today webinar with Mahan Tavakoli coming up with John Rossman, who's the author of The Amazon Way. And then another Frontline conversation on June 15th with Marty Kendrick, another 35th anniversary special, talking about the founding of Bright Beginnings and a lot of other things. So Marty is in our third class, so we're very, very pleased she's gonna be with us. So Steve, welcome. It's great to have you. Thank you so much for everything you've done to help LGW get started. How about if we start off by saying, when did you first hear of LGW and what made you interested in helping get it formed?
Well, that's a long time ago. My memory is one of the things that I leave around other places frequently. So we'll see how this look back really works. But what would you like for me to comment on?
Well, when did you first hear about this as an idea, and what made you become a founder? Why would you want to start something like this? Or why did you want to start something like this in the region?
It was in the middle of the 1980s. I was past president of the Board of Trade at that time, and John Tidings came to me with this idea. Beverly Blum, Barbara Blum, I mean, had been talking with John, and she had experiences in Atlanta, I believe. And John put together a small group of us to kick around the idea to see whether we thought it was a good one for Washington, and we all did. And then we started working on how we would begin to get it done, how we would fund the initial efforts, how we would outreach to the community. We wanted to have representatives from various parts of the community and all parts of the community. And it took really, as I recall, 18 months, 24 months before we really opened the door to it. I think our first class was 1987, I believe was the
That's
first.
right. Yep.
It was interesting because in the middle of 1987, I was during this Board of Trade activities, and from 1975 to 87, I was managing partner of Pete Marwick, then KPMG's office in Washington. But I had been transferred from Washington to New York in 1987. So all of this change in my life, helping to start Leadership Washington, and all was laid on top of the moving my job from Washington to New York. And we didn't move our home, however. So I was able to be back here in Washington very frequently during that period, and help get the first class started. And what a great class it was, you know. And I was able to attend some of the activities, not all of them, but in any event, that's what the period was. John Tidings and Barbara Blum and a group of others active in the Board of Trade, and a woman that was with, I've forgotten the other organization. It was a civic organization of lady voters. Pardon me?
Junior League. They helped found us.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what happened then, and I spent 5 years running around the world, running our international operations. Then I retired and came back to Washington. So I've been stuck with me here in and out. We have a home in Florida that we spend a great deal of time there in the wintertime. And of cold falls and early springs, and a home in Bethesda.
So what was it like that first year? How did you go about recruiting class members? And you attended some of the classes that year, I know. So what was that like?
Yeah, we had, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, I've forgotten how many people in that first class. It wasn't as big a class, I think, as you currently now have.
It was 40 plus, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And, great group of self-starting people. I mean, it was almost get out of their way because they're coming through, They were just outstanding. I remember one event was trying to understand what happens to people that live in Southeast Washington that have a job over in Northern Virginia. How do they get there every day? So that what the class did was go down and board buses and got on a subway and then board more buses and trying to figure out the really tough obstacles that people experience on a daily basis of just getting to work, and that sort of outreach, attempting to understand how people operate. We had programs dealing with how do we feed people that are desperate. I mean, it was really a well thought out and rounded program that evolved, and the class really turned it on and did a great job.
So you had, it appears you had quite an impact on that first class, because at the end of the year, it appears you had quite an impact on that first class, even though you were shuttling between New York and here, because at the end of the year, at their closing retreat, they handed out what they called the Stevie Awards, which are named after you.
Yeah.
So something you did caught their attention.
Well, I'm not sure about that. It was a great award. I've still got a couple of them. I got one, and then somebody willed me theirs, but it was a white cue ball on a little piece of black square base with a black bow tie under it. So it was pretty appropriate for the white cue ball Harlan, Anyhow, that's
Well, the class is very proud of those Stevie Awards. They're very excited about them.
well, they
They'll talk about them to this day. So.
They elected officers, and they really ran their show. And I suspect that's what's happened annually from that base. But
what we saw that really, first. Go ahead.
It was really designed for an understanding of one, how do you work, how best to work with people of different backgrounds. And we had people from all sorts of backgrounds in that first class, and I'm sure you still do. And then get an understanding of how the region is governed, what are the economic impacts and the possible threats to the economics of the region. We were fortunate. It was a reasonably solid economic base at that time, as I recall. Not globally outstanding, but it was better than it was in '82 when I was president of the Board of Trade. We had all kinds of economic pressures at that, as I recall. But it was a wide variety of education and cross friendship development, people that you normally wouldn't meet if you just get on a bus and go to work and come home each day. And people had lasting friendships from that. They had a real building of understanding and created some very lasting friendships during that 1 year period. Met one day a month, Monday a month was what the schedule was for, I think, an academic year of approximately 9 months, start in the fall and stop in the spring. And it was terrific.
Well, as I said, that first class really set the standard for the classes to follow. We still follow that schedule of 1 day a month with an opening retreat and closing retreat, fall to spring. And we look at the different topics that impact the region and the different challenges they're facing in the region.
Let me ask you, Doug, what were you doing in 1987? Were you running the county?
1987, I was just elected to mayor of Rockville. I was working for AT&T at the time, and that was my real job. And my part-time job was mayor of Rockville until 93, and then 94, I was elected county executive.
93 and 4, you were county.
94, I was elected county. Yeah, I left mayor. 93 was elected county executive in 94. It's a lifetime ago, Steve, a long time ago.
Oh, believe me. Well, that's where I first met you. We have known each other for all those many years. So, for almost 40 years, or almost 30, I guess, closer. Never was good at math. CPAs aren't any good at math.
So you came back to DC, you said, after a few years of traveling around the world. And then when were you put on the Financial Control Board? Can you talk to us about that and what lessons you learned from that? You talked about the region being good economic shape in the late 80s, but the district was not. The district had some very serious problems. And eventually a Financial Control Board was put in place of the district, and you were a member of it. So can you talk about that for a little bit?
I remember it was 1995. So I retired from the accounting firm in 92 and went in the real estate business locally in 92. And in 1995, I was appointed then to the first DC Control Board. And what the reason for that appointment was to the board, and what the reason the board was appointed was that the city District of Columbia was absolutely flat broke. The previous administration, Sharon Pratt Kelly had been the mayor for the previous 4 years, and we had a real economic difficulty, but the city was broke. I mean, I'll tell you how broke it was. The police had to bring their own toilet paper to the station houses because the city wasn't buying toilet paper, if you can imagine. The oil companies refused to ship gasoline to the police because they hadn't been paid for the last 2 or 3 shipments. And 94, the election, the House of Representatives changed from Democrat to Republican. And the Republicans said, we can't have this Washington, D.C., and it's our nation's capital. We got to do something. So they did a study, GAO did a study, looked at what happened in New York, looked at what happened in Chicago, and came back with a program to appoint a 5-person control board for a period of time to straighten out the finances. We had financial oversight. The 5 people that were appointed, there were 4 blacks and me, the cue ball was appointed. And we got along just unbelievably, unbelievable. And by that, I mean, we had to take votes, and we had to take votes in public. And we worked issues until we had all of us agreeing on what to do. We just worked them and worked them and worked them, and all of our votes were unanimous. Can you imagine that happening today? All votes unanimous, except one. And the chairman of the group was a fellow by the name of Andrew Brimmer. Brimmer had come further in one lifetime than any human being I've ever met. He was born in a sharecrop family down in South Louisiana. And shortly after they had difficulty with the boll weevil and the cotton crop, he and his family, when he was a young man or very young, moved to Seattle, Washington. And the Second World War came along, and he went into the Army as an enlisted guy, and came back out, survived the war. I really don't know what he did during the war, but I do know he was in the Army. And he went to the University of Washington on the GI Bill. And he did so well there that he won academic scholarship to Harvard. And he not only graduated undergraduate, but he ended up with a PhD in economics from Harvard. I mean, and he had a mind, I'll tell you, he never, ever forgot anything. he could replay conversations, and he was just absolutely brilliant. But he was chairman, I was vice chairman, and the other three were active in the community. All five of us, I mean, were active in the community. That's the reason I was appointed. They wanted somebody with an accounting background, I think, and appointed me. But we got along just famously. I mean, really, really good. It was hard work, trying to understand what was going on. And then Marion Barry had been re-elected mayor in 1994, and he took office in early 1995. Our work began in the summer of 1995 and lasted until we were 3-year original appointments, and then lasted until 2000. So it was basically 5.5, 6-year kind of effort. But it was a wonderful experience. We were lucky. We had a good economics. I'm not sure what we'd have done had we not had good economics, but we were able to get Wall Street to turn around and loan us money. The law that created us was a brilliant piece of legislation, and then for instance, the job of chief financial officer was a new job in the city. It had not been, there had not been a chief financial officer before. Once the mayor the law said the mayor will nominate the individual, the control board will approve that nomination. But once nominated and approved, only the control board could fire the person and replace them. So the game was, at the time, at least from my perspective, was Marion wanted to put somebody in there that was would be pretty loyal to him, and someone that he could have quite a bit of control over. And the first 2 or 3 people he nominated were, I mean, they just weren't qualified. And then we got a nomination from Marion Barry on Anthony Williams. And so we were going to interview Mr. Williams, who was then the chief financial officer for the agriculture department, working for the federal government, the agriculture department. At that time, agriculture was running all of the data processing systems, and it was much more complex than just what farmers wanted to do. So he had a big job there. Anyway, he applied for this job, and Mr. Barry, or Mayor Barry, nominated him. So we go through this interview process. Well, one of our staff had gotten a letter that Williams had sent to the mayor. I don't know how he got it, but he got the letter. It said, "Mr. Mayor, I, Tony Williams, will see that you are the navigator of this ship, and I will merely, you are the captain of the ship, excuse me. You are the captain of the ship, and I will merely be the navigator." And I got that letter, and I said, "Oh, this is exactly what we don't want." And so I asked him during this interview, I said, "Mr. Williams, our staff got a copy of this letter you sent to the mayor. What's that all about? Tell me about that." said, "He got me this nomination, didn't it?" And so I thought, if he's smart enough to figure out how to manipulate Marion Barry, he's a pretty, he's a wonderfully smart guy. And did that ever turn out to be right? He was terrific as the chief financial officer. When he and Nat, oh boy, my mind is gone. I'll come back to that in a second.
Yeah, so is mine.
Nat Gandhi was came in as to help him as he came in as in charge of tax raising. Well, the tax department had stacks and stacks and stacks of unopened mail and checks. I mean, it was just total mismanagement of the administration prior to. And Marion Barry, he just couldn't believe it. He really was supportive of Tony and getting it straightened out. And Tony did just a marvelous job. And of course, that's the better part of history, because he ran for and mayor and was elected and was reelected. That's another story, I tell you. Williams was elected the first time, and then was going to run for the election the second time. Well, he had turned it over to somebody to get the number of people to support his nomination for the second election. And so they had to go out to the public and get a couple of thousand signatures to support this. Well, he went out and he got a couple of thousand signatures. About half of them were fraudulent. And Donald Duck and Dick Tracy, and I mean, unbelievable. So the election board threw his nomination out. And he won that second election on a write-in basis. Can you imagine that? Getting enough support from the citizens of DC to win on a win on a write-in basis. And what a job he's done. Just unbelievably great job.
I will say every politician's nightmare is to make some kind of mistake that gets you off the ballot. That you haven't met the requirements to be on the ballot. Nobody can vote for you if you're not on the ballot. So that is a nightmare in terms of, you thought you're set, you're in there, and all of a sudden you're not going to be on the ballot, and you get it right in. That was an incredible campaign. I remember that. Remember all that very, very well, because I was running for my second term as county executive and all that was happening.
How'd you do that, Williams?
I don't know. In Montgomery County, you didn't need signatures. In the city of Rockville, you needed signatures. And I would sweat until my signatures were turned in and until they were verified by the Board of Elections that I was going to be on the ballot. Anyway, but I've said many times that I think that the direction of the city really has been set by Tony Williams, really was set by Tony Williams. And every mayor since then has really carried out, I think, sort of his vision for where we need to go and the kind of community we need to be. And it's been, the district is a wonderful place. And finally, it's seeing the kind of, I think, success that it's deserved for a long, long time. I'm very happy to see
it
that.
was. One of the issues we had while we did on the control board, we took the city activities and we divided them up between the five of us. For instance, I had public safety and public works. Well, public safety was, at that time, was the courts, were the police department, the fire department, the city attorney's office, all manner of things dealing with public safety. And we had a police department that was not very functional. We did a bunch of studies. We went up and looked what they were doing in Boston. Boston had great success in turning around the crime right there. And what was going on in New York. We studied the New York CompStat approach to policing, and we put a similar system in the police department, and we had a police chief who made a couple of big mistakes, and he resigned. And so we now have an acting police chief, and we went on a search, and we hired a search firm to help us. And I put together a committee to make the decision as to who the police chief should be. And it was everybody that had an oar in the water on public safety. I mean, it was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee of the Council, Jack Evans, the chairman of the council, it was the mayor, it was prosecuting attorney, it was the federal prosecuting attorney, everybody that had a real oar in that water. And we had this search firm, and we said, who is really terrific? You know, let's go after the really good police leader. And they said, well, we've got one in Chicago who's pretty good, but he's not interested in coming, and he didn't want to work for Marion Barry because of the reputation the mayor had at that time. And he won't apply. So I was out in Kansas City visiting some friends, and I got a call from the office in the district and saying that that day that Chuck Ramsey had been passed over for police chief in Chicago. He wanted to be the police chief in Chicago. There were two deputies. He was one of the deputies, and he didn't get the job. So I said, well, can we contact him? And yeah, but he won't, he doesn't want anybody to know he's talking to us. So I flew from Kansas City to Chicago and met with Chuck Ramsey in a hotel room out by the airport. He didn't want anybody to know that he was talking to Washington, D.C. And he said, I won't come if I have to report to Marion Barry. And I said, well, the mayor is the mayor, but you don't have to report to Marion Barry. We'll see that you can report to the control board. Well, lo and behold, I thought that we had clear understanding that by that time, the law passed in Congress giving the control board oversight of the police department. But there was one stipulation within some act or some part of the law that gave the mayor the right to appoint the police chief, and that law had not changed with the advent of the control board. So how do we get this committee with the mayor on it to get him to get this group to approve Ramsey? Well, the committee interviewed Ramsey eventually, and decided that he was the best of the nominees that we were considering. And he wanted a contract that said he reported to the control board. And okay, we'll figure that out. Well, we're having an announcement to announce Chuck Ramsey to be police chief. Ramsey brought his wife and his family to Washington, and he was going to stand up, and the mayor was going to announce he's going to police chief. Well, the group that we had put together agreed that Ramsey was the best, so I didn't have any problem with that. But then when I got to get this contract signed, I got to get the mayor to sign the contract. So I said, how am I going to do that if it says in the contract that he's reporting to the control board? So I waited till the very last minute. We had about an 11 o'clock in the morning announcement. I waited till about 10 o'clock to approach Barry to say, you know, it's my fault. You need to sign his contract before that meeting. So he signed the contract, took it home, read it. We had a nice meeting. Everything is going right. We got a new police chief. And he took the contract home, read it, and saw that the police chief now reports to the control board. Didn't like that very much. And so he held a press conference the next day and said that he was disavowing his signature. And we've been working with the House and the Senate. They each have oversight committees on the District of Columbia. And he disavowed, he held a press conference saying that this guy Harlan at the control board had tricked him and that he was disavowing it. And I got a call from Senator Locke Faircloth, who was chairman of the Senate Oversight Committee on the district. And he said, "What is this all about?" So I told him what I'd done, and I said, "Barry's right. I didn't know any other way to get his signature, so I did kind of do that." And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." He got a law passed, and some law flying through Congress, transferring the power of the mayor very clearly in all aspects on policing to the control board. And he got that done in about 3 days. And President Clinton signed it. And now the police chief reports to the control board. Barry called me up. He said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I had friends in high places, you know." But it worked out really well. Ramsey was a spectacular police chief. He really straightened out. We had a problem with a lot of homicides, and the homicide department wasn't doing very well. All of those leaders got changed out, and he really did a spectacular job running the police department. And and then he left here. He was recruited by Philadelphia, who ran a police department 2 or 3 times bigger than the one we had in Washington. And he's just done a wonderful job. And since then, he's a nationwide commentator on effective policing. The national networks pick him up, and he's just an absolutely honest, straight, brilliant guy that knows how to do things in an effective fashion. And it was wonderful. I would ride with the police people around the district at night. That's a way to see the city. When Faircloth took over that committee in the Senate, he says, "How will I understand the city?" And I said, "Well, Senator, the best way I know to do it is go on midnight rides around the town and see what's going on." And because it opened my eyes, and he did some of that. He would meet midnight roll calls in police precincts and talk to the police officers. He was very, very supportive. He was really good. So we had a lot of good people helping us do our job, but the leadership of the control board was Andrew Brimmer, and he was absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to hush up on that.
If Republicans didn't take over Congress in '94, do you think there would have been a financial control board? The Democrats still held power?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
How could I know that?
But you believe the control board was really critical to the future success of DC?
I believe it absolutely.
Yeah.
I absolutely do, because we've had, we went from dead broke, can't pay our bills, to having more money than several states do in the bank in reserve. I mean, we had a payroll that was far, far too large. We cut that back. We straightened the contracting system out. I don't know what's going on now. I suspect it's a lot better than it was that we found when we got in there, but I haven't been close to it, so I don't know. But it was all aspects of financial control, accounting systems, computer systems, all of that stuff had to be straightened out. It was quite an experience.
No, it's an extraordinary story. And I think people don't recall how bleak the situation was at the time that sort of forced the creation of this financial control board. Well, and what a success it was. People don't really remember those days. No.
Yeah, it was a great experience for me because I learned a lot. I mean, for instance, I learned that power is something that it's the threat of power rather than the actual use of power. That, for instance, we could break contracts. We never had to break a contract. We just strongly suggest they get renegotiated properly. And it's the threat of power. The law that created the control board was a genius law. I mean, they were very smart and gave the control board a lot of power. And it sunset. And once financial situation was in great shape, a balanced budget for 3 or 4 years, the control board went away. But the other part of that is absolute genius. Once you don't operate as a balanced budget in the District of Columbia, a control board snaps back into place. And that threat keeps people from not balancing their budget, not operating under a proper control system. So they don't, elected officials, people don't want another control board, but that's the force that's over it if they don't operate properly. So you've got that to deal with.
I do want to add something. Marietta Cannon wrote in that her insight was that it wasn't the control board that did it, but it's who the members of the control board were. Alice Rivlin, you, Bremers, you said.
Alice, it's interesting, and Alice wasn't on the original control board. Alice was running the Office of Management and Budget for the federal government, and she's the one that swore me into this job then in 1995. But she left that job and she became, after 3.5 years, she became chairman of the control board, which Bremer stepped down. She came in and took over. And her approach was, it's been stabilized. Now we got to work on getting rid of the control board. In other words, we have to help people learn how to really run it themselves without a control board looking over everything they were doing. And she did a marvelous job of that. So in 2001, the control board went away.
And we're thrilled that Alice was a member of Leadership Greater Washington, as well as Tony Williams. He was a class of '98. His classmates take,
I bet that was great.
Take credit for convincing him to run for mayor and helping him get elected mayor. So how much truth there is in it, I don't know, but there's a lot of credit taking going on. So
well, '98 was the year.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit to leadership styles. I mean, I'm just listening to you talk. Tell us about your leadership style, your leadership skills, and what you think is effective. I've heard 2 things from you. One is carry a big stick, but don't necessarily use it, just threaten it. And the other was hands-on, in terms of the ride-alongs and other things. You're a very hands-on sort of leader. What makes an effective leader for you, and what are the things that have worked for you?
Well, I think a couple of points that you're touching on are part of that. One, I believe that you have to set goals. You have to get buy-in on those goals from the people you're working with. Then you got to let the people alone to figure out how to do. You can't day-to-day manage people. You can't run people and have them be successful. They've got to buy into which way is north. Let's go north. You don't say, well, you put your right foot out and then you follow that with your left foot and we'll eventually march north. No, you say, we're going this direction. Everybody agree with it? Yeah, okay. Then get out of their way and help them measure the direction. the other thing is if you want to accomplish something, you've got to have some goals, and the goals have to be understood and they have to be measurable, and that you have to have milestones along the way to see that you're going in the right direction toward the goal. Those points. I really believe very strongly in that. We had a great office at KPMG when I was in charge of the office here, and it did very well. And then control board experience helped me a lot understanding what power is and how to use it effectively, and by not using it, and helping people set goals and achieve the goals. It's not magic, it's just hard work, and you got to be clear, you got to understand, you got to talk and listen. Two-way communication, 50% of it's got to be listening, or more than 50%. So you need to understand what you're trying to accomplish and what the implications of that are to the surrounding environment. I mean, all of that is part of leadership, and I haven't got any great insight on it. I do know that it's wonderful to be around when it works. I'm laughing. Linda Rabbit, who used to work for me as my secretary, and then helped us in marketing KPMG in Washington, and set up her own company. Now is probably the most successful, one of the top 4 or 5 most successful women in the country. I mean, she started a company that, and what she says she learned working together was that she set clear, sharp, definable goals that people understand. And that's one thing that she says she's done in her company, and it's worked out very well for her.
You got a comment from Last Cars that says that you were the person who recruited Tony Williams to join LGW. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
And we have a question from Jack Nichols about the working from home situation, and where do you see that trend going? And do you think business productivity is going to suffer as a result of that?
Well, I don't have any great insight on that. I do believe that there's been a massive change, that I see it manifesting itself by the owners of office buildings as I understand it now. I'm not close to that market anymore. Office buildings are trading at less than replacement value cost. That's new for Washington. And so the investors in real estate are saying, well, we've got to be careful with this, because we're not going to fill up all these offices like we have in the past. But people are pretty adaptable. They'll figure it out, and I think people will be working from home part-time and working from an office part-time, and you'll go to office concepts where somebody won't have a specific office, but you'll have a right to an office within the framework of the company for 2 or 3 days a week or something like that. And it's a concept called hoteling, but in office space. And I'm sure that'll expand because the flexibility, and that there's going to be a lot of cut down on the amount of space required. I ran an accounting firm. Everybody had an office. That's never going to happen again. All the partners had offices. Well, now partners don't have offices. They work from home or work from wherever their clients are, and they come in 1 or 2 days a week maybe, or a part of a day. And so you need the flexibility. So it has a lot of ramifications. It really does.
Well, from a much smaller point of view, Leisure Greater Washington, 6 employees and an intern, we have downsize our office space. We're going to be sharing offices and hoteling, as you said, in the fall. So we're going to be mostly working from home, but also have office space when we need to be.
I think that's going to be universal.
Yeah.
I really do. And
I
it's
do
not,
want
excuse me, your point's very well taken, because it's not big employers only. It's all employers
yeah.
that have. So you got to manage people differently, though. You got to manage them. You got to figure out a better way of communicating, and we're setting goals and measuring against those goals, and people working together to accomplish these goals. How are you going to do all that? It's change.
I do want to put in a plug for one of my best friends, John Viemeyer, who, when you were on the control board, was running KPMG in the Washington area, and was chairman of the board for LGW. He's a member of LGW and was chairman of the board. So I know he's a big fan of yours and wanted to say hello. So,
well, I'll tell you, there's another guy, just fantastic individual. He came to work in the Washington office as a junior accountant. Was hired about the time I got here, and from Notre Dame, and ended up managing the office, managing partner of the office. Then he was managing partner in New York. Then he was managing partner of the United States, and eventually was managing partner, the senior partner of the whole worldwide KPMG. So let me tell you, he hit it out of the park. What a job he has done. So I guess I've just been lucky and finding really talented people and working together, and trying to help them understand what we're trying to do here.
I know John would say his greatest success in his business life was his year as chairman of LGW, right? I mean, that's the
good for you.
Yeah,
Good
there
for
you go. There you go. What a great guy. We have another comment question from Marieva. She said that when you've spoken about leadership before, you mentioned a positive attitude and building enthusiasm as important. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Marieva. When I started work, I started in the St. Louis office of Pete Marwick, and I went to work for a guy that was a manager and then became a new partner. And he used to tell me, he said, what you have to do is you have to make up your mind you're enthusiastic and positive about things. And you can talk yourself into that. So you get up every morning and you say, I'm enthusiastic. I really, really believe in this. And just everything you do, you look at it, the positive, enthusiastic way of doing things. And that's part of it. It really is. Mayon, who ran Dale Carnegie, and that's a whole new subject here on leadership. I think it's the concepts of Dale Carnegie, the concepts of there are 3 or 4 books that are written in the mid-30s that are having lasting impact, had lasting impact on me, and I encouraged our people to read them. Napoleon Hill's book, Dale Carnegie's book, and a couple of others were all great things for being focused and being positive and being enthusiastic about what you do. And those really are good books. I encouraged all of our people to understand what those concepts were. And I remember when I made the press shortly after becoming managing partner there, I walked around the office the first day and was not too impressed with the way our people were dressing. So I didn't want to tell them how to dress, but I did go out and buy a couple of 100 copies of a book called Dress for Success. I said, I can't tell you how to dress, but I'm asking you to read the book, because it made a lot of sense to me, and it helped. We did better, So those were fun days, I gotta tell you. Those were
Well,
fun
Steve, we've
days.
had a great conversation today. I want to thank you very much for it. I do want to sort of close with a question from Mahan Tavakoli about our chair, who you referenced, about Leadership Greater Washington. We've seen it change over the years. You know, has it become what you thought it would be, and where do you think it should go in the next 35 years?
Wow. You know, the Mahan is brilliant for asking these kind of questions that are non-answerable. I have no idea where it goes, but I will say that we've got to figure out this race situation so that not only does everybody have an equal playing field, but it's understood to be an equal playing field. I have no magic about that, but it is an issue that needs constant and thoughtful attention. So I just think that ordering people to do this, that, or set quotas for probably will have a negative impact. But I do believe that, you know, here I'm a white guy that worked with 4 of the smartest people I've ever met, and they were just all African Americans, and what a great experience it was. So I can tell you that if you're looking down your nose at the African American community in this world, you're crazy as hell, because there's just like everybody else, there's some really brilliant ones and some that are not so brilliant, and that we all need to work together. So just don't have any time for any other approach to it.
It's great that you mentioned that, because that is something that we have adopted at Leadership Greater Washington, anti-racist leadership. We're doing a number of sessions, a number of series on anti-racist leadership training, racial equity, things like that. So that's become part of the core of who we are. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Well, but just think about this. The Republican Congress and getting Clinton to appoint 4 blacks and 1 white to save the city was brilliant, because these 4 people were just a lot smarter than I'll ever be smart. They were just unbelievable, and support them and help the board get things done. But it was never a race issue at all. I mean, I felt welcome in their homes, and they were welcome in mine. I mean, it was just, hey, we're working together on this, and it really worked. So I haven't got any time for anybody else that has any other notions. So I'm sorry.
Steve, thank you very much. What a great conversation. Thank you for all your memories of Leadership Greater Washington at the beginning, and thank you for all your efforts to get us to where we are today. We wouldn't be here without you. So, and frankly, the district wouldn't be here without you in the control board. So thank you very much for that as well.
Thank you. I don't think you're right, but thank you very much anyway.
Thanks, everybody. We've got a survey in the chat room for you. Please take some time to fill it out and give us some feedback. And I do want to thank PNC for being the sponsor for this Frontline conversation. They've been a great sponsorship partner with us over the years. We thank them very much for that. Steve, thank you. It's great to talk with you, and I know I will see you soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.